In this video, we're going to show you every single defensive position in football and how it relates to stopping the offense. Now, before we get started, we have courses on every single defensive position. If you want to go to victorysports.com and click on the courses tab, it will link you right there. We'll also put a link in the description below. But this video is just a basic breakdown of every single defensive position on the field. Also, we want to make note that every position on the field is relative to a basic defensive formation. Coaches may change the formation and they may call certain positions certain names, okay? So if you're watching this and you say, hey, my coach calls it this, but it's this, it can change. We're just talking about the general terms for defensive positions. So the first one that we're going to start with is the defensive line, okay? And within the defensive line, there's typically two positions. The first one being the defensive tackles, okay? These tackles play in the interior, and these players are often bigger players that can help control the line of scrimmage, mainly for stopping the run, okay? And the reason why defensive tackle is so hard is because they need to be able to make contact with an offensive lineman, read what's going on, shed the block, and then be able to make a tackle. If it's a pass, they have to oftentimes fight double teams and also win on the interior in order to get to the quarterback. So these players are usually the biggest players on the field on the defense because they need to be able to do both skill sets of stopping the run as well as stopping the pass. Now on the exterior, we have defensive ends. Now these players can be bigger players, but oftentimes they're speedier players that can come off the edge and attack the outside of the pocket, making the quarterback's job harder and harder. Some of these players in the NFL are Von Miller and Jadeveon Clowney, guys that are able to come off the edge and beat the tackles and also disrupt the quarterback. That way he gets rid of the ball a little bit faster. These players are also responsible for stopping the run, but it's a little bit easier to play defensive end than it is to play on the interior defensive tackle. So that's the defensive line. As mentioned, some coaches may have their defensive ends play on the interior and have their linebackers, which we'll get to in a second, play on the exterior. It all changes within the scheme. But typically on a Saturday watching college football or on a Sunday watching NFL football, you'll see 4 defensive linemen with their hand in the ground on the defensive line. The next position is the linebackers. Now they call them linebackers because exactly where they're lined up, behind the line, okay, or in back of the line. Now these players are the most versatile players on the field because they have to be able to play the run as well as play the pass. Now these players' body types, especially in the NFL, are a little bit bigger, but they got to be able to move at a fast pace because they have to be able to chase down running backs. One of the main jobs of a linebacker is to be able to chase down the running back and make a tackle, but also be able to drop into zone coverage or play man coverage against a speedier receiver or a tight end. So this is why a linebacker's job, especially as the player gets older, becomes a little bit more difficult because they're asked to do a little bit more based on the skill set of the receivers or the offense that they're playing. These linebackers can be outside linebackers or inside linebackers depending on the coach's scheme. Popular linebackers in the past have been guys like Ray Lewis and Luke Kuechly. Again, this is a very versatile position. The next position are the defensive backs. Now, these players are often the smallest and speediest players on the field. These positions are broken down into cornerbacks and safeties, okay? That's cornerbacks with a C, not quarterback with a Q, okay? Cornerbacks. And starting with the cornerbacks, again, they are often the smallest and speediest players on the field because they have to be able to keep up with the wide receivers. These players are responsible for playing man-to-man coverage, meaning they'll follow the receiver wherever they go, or they'll play a zone coverage, meaning they'll cover a certain area of the field. Whoever comes into that area, that's what they'll play. The cornerback position isn't necessarily the hardest to learn, but it's one of the hardest positions to play in football. Cornerbacks have to be able to work backwards as well as forwards at a high rate of speed. They have to have quick hips, quick feet in order to transition to the football to get an interception or to break up the play. So this is one of the hardest positions to play in football, but it's one of the easiest positions to learn. The next position is the safety position, and teams will often have 2 different safeties. They'll have a free safety and they'll have a strong safety. Now, the strong safety is typically a hybrid between a speedier player that's maybe big enough to be a linebacker, but oftentimes fast enough to be a defensive back. So teams will use a hybrid of the two and call him a strong safety. And this player is responsible for covering receivers as well as playing zone coverage and playing a safety position. Now, the reason they call it a safety position because it's typically the last line of defense, before the team scores a touchdown. So let's say the team runs the football and they happen to get through the defensive line, get through the linebackers. The last line of defense is the safeties, the strong and the free safety. Now, the reason they call it the free safety, because it's often the safety that plays the deepest, okay, and helps with anything that's thrown deep down the field. Teams will use this free safety in different ways, but oftentimes these two safeties, the strong safety and the free safety, one will be more run dominant, one will be more pass dominant, depending how the coach uses them. But there's typically two in the defense. So these are the 11 positions that are played on defense in football. Again, they can vary by name, they can vary by position, but as far as having defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs, those are the three main position groupings that are in football. If you have any questions about the positions in football, let us know in the comment section below. We try to answer all the questions that you have about football. That way we can help out and make the viewing on Sunday or Saturday or even Friday night easier for you when you're watching the game. I'm Chris Haddad. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.